Okay, last video is uploading, so let's do one more just because I'm in that mood. Now, where were we? We're at the start of this place. We've established that it looks putrid whenever I hit that button, so maybe a quick moment of just a close-up of these guys again if I haven't given one, and then we'll turn it off. As you can see here, every part of this man is decorated. He's got elaborate knee pads, he's got crappy half stenciled on looking font which looks like a texture applied in paint on his shoulder pad. Every piece of his thing just seems to have a bajillion parts which don't really look good, and maybe in some syphilitic moron's mind I look at this and think, it's so realistic. He's got shells, bro. Those old Marines, they got caught out without their shells. Don't they feel like idiots? He's got a pack. He's ready to have a sleep under the giant alien spaceship. This is so sensible. I think what may have actually happened in this game was these were the Army Trooper Marine designs from Halo Reach. Like, specifically this was meant to be a guy who is not doing this job, and they used this model here because these people are idiots basically, but I'm not quite sure how it happened. I think some assets from Halo Reach ended up in this visual remake, but I'm not really sure. This may have been entirely original. I'd have to check some things. Again, I'm not editing. Unfortunately, it's a lot of work for a lazy idiot like me, but, you know, just, it may be a reused asset, it may be a new one. Either way, I think it's a very poor decision when you compare it to, again, just the leanness of this. It's very pleasing to me by comparison. It fits the physicality of the world we're in. We're a world of very simple shapes which bump into each other and interact in a very real fashion. This blocky origami man, it feels appropriate that I can jump on him like a pillar. But this man, the same physicality feels completely absurd. Does that make sense? The same, of course, applies for things like the rocks. And here's what I've mentioned before in the last level but couldn't really show off. This wall is here. If I change the graphics, it doesn't change the terrain. The wall is still here. I can hit something which isn't actually there, which is a very uncanny and unpleasant feeling. And there are actually a few points even in the game where, like, you'll try to shoot through a spot like this, and if you're on old graphics, you will just hit nothing. It's really almost just kind of obscene how far they went with this. Like, look at all of that. That's just not physically there. Like, who said that's okay? That's absolutely absurd. One moment. Okay, I think we're back. Sorry, I think we're back. That was all just pause. Let me check once more to make sure we're good. Yep, we're going, so. Now, I've complained enough about the very, very stupid design of this area in the visual overhaul. Let's just talk about what's actually here now and what we're doing. We've gone a bit out of focus on the story. To recap that and fix what I broke with the audio, actually, brief meta thing here. I think tomorrow I might re-record the first level, go much quicker, establish the basics of my intentions with doing all of this, and just so that I have a coverage of the first level so you can watch it all chronologically and keep up without having to suffer the very bad audio problems I did there. I'll label that first set Season 0 or something. You'll still be able to see them, but I'll put them aside. That's just something that's been bothering me. I want everything to be at a bare minimum standard of watchable, even if I mess up a lot of this. Now, where were we? Yeah, I'm going to actually play the game now. As you can see, I have my torch, but also night vision through this scope, just a fun, unnecessary feature. Now, the game is going to do something very strange with us on this level. How stealth as an abstract concept, or really what I'm looking for here is concrete one, worked in video games wasn't agreed upon in this time. It was just whatever you feel like doing, whatever feels cool. The gameplay police aren't going to get on you and say, that's not a good stealth system, stealth mechanic, it has to work like Far Cry 3. There is no camp total alertness here that will go up based on basically what happens is once they see me, they're all going to go to normal, but until they do, I can just shoot them with impunity and they won't really react. It's kind of an odd way that they set this part of the game up. There was no real accepted convention here, and having seen other people do it, a lot of people just instantly run in and start fighting. It doesn't really matter, it's not really a serious advantage, this isn't a hard game. Especially you'll notice I'm on normal and basically don't have to think while doing this. Just explaining how this part works again, I think it's odd that people who ostensibly love games, they say they're playing their favorite game, they won't just explain basically what's going on moment by moment while they do it. That's something I'm often disappointed by when watching other people play games. I want to hear them basically explain how they think about certain parts of it. That would be interesting to me. If someone isn't smart, they can at least give me their not smart picture, but instead these people, you watch a normal person play Halo, they're just babbling about their day or something, it's a waste of time, or they're just basically making animal noise because that's what they are. Very boring, very much a waste of time, but yes, I'm hoping that by watching this, even if you haven't played it, you can get a vague idea of how Bungie built this game just from me talking about it. And yes, how this is lined up is once I shoot a certain number of them and reveal myself, the aliens start sending their reinforcements. My guys with their torches on and everything, they run in down there to help me out, and we have this big nice gunfight here. No things to drive on this level, but we can get into these in a few spots. Vaguely useful, more it's dangerous if they get turned against us, especially on higher difficulty settings, but here the game, again, it's not very hard. It's made for people who maybe haven't used consoles too much, haven't played first-person shooters too much, and again, remember, the twin-stick control scheme, it wasn't created by this game, but it may as well have been. This is why it took off. Pardon me, that's just my throat again, but yes, 2001 or whenever they made this, they couldn't count on people really knowing what to do. There's been a lot of accumulated knowledge since this was made, which means people are much, just naturally much better at this. They know what to expect going in, they have a far easier time. So, what's normal here might be easy in a newer game, I don't know. I don't really play new games, frankly, but yes, I feel like a lot of games, they pride themselves on presenting as hard. This game does actually have a very well thought out hardest difficulty, but I think that was kind of an incidental thing, like they didn't put too much work into how does this work as a serious, challenging game. Like it's basically just tune everything up to make it harder, and it happened to settle in a very happy spot that feels very ingeniously thought out. Why I kind of think that is that the difficulty in Myth, I find that a strange abstract word to use, difficulty, but that's a different subject. In Myth, that game before this, the strategy game, that has a very poorly handled, in my opinion, grasp on how to make itself harder or easier for you, and Halo 2, you may have heard, its hardest difficulty setting, Legendary, is basically a meme because it's almost unplayable. I've beaten all of Bungie's Halo games on Legendary, except for 2, because it's just absurd, frankly. It's not fun, it just feels silly. There are people who pride themselves on playing that, but I just think that's wrong. That's just a bad use of your time. I don't think that that means that you appreciate the game better than anyone else. I think it means that you're a masochist who attaches prestige to strange and absurd things. And while I was talking about difficulty, these guys were having a difficult time, I think. Did any of them explode? Maybe not. But yeah, this is a very interestingly assembled level, and something I won't actually be able to show you because it's set to a fairly easy thing unless I take my eyes off of them for a while. Oh, look at them go there, killing elites like it's no problem. Is that in this level and a few others, if the Marines who are with you die, like all of them, they'll actually be replaced. Like one of those ships we came in on will actually swing by like over there and drop off another 5, which I think is a very cool scene to see, especially on the higher difficulties where, the situation is more chaotic, you're trying to stay alive. These guys will just die because you can't help it, and then more will show up and distract the aliens. It's all very exciting and well thought out, and if you're not too good at the game, you kill them all with a grenade or something, you get more help, which is nice. but more I think it's just cool because, again, it just makes it all feel more alive. You know, the voice in your head isn't just an exposition dumper. It gives off the impression that they've actually got your back. They're trying to send you help. Look out, dudes. Just watch them fight because they're fun. Again, like, look at them bounce from node to node. As I mentioned, you'll notice the constant pausing. That's their thought nodes, basically, where they move to a spot, mentally fetch a new command, and then execute it. It maybe looks a bit spazzy that they just constantly hover back and forth on the ground between spots, but I think it gives them a good lively look, and it's a very simple solution to what could be a very complex problem, which has very much, in my opinion, good enough results. Pardon me. Yeah, definitely just a very elegant solution, in my opinion. Just very simple inputs to get very it just works results. They just do everything they need to do. These guys go, and the aliens, they work exactly the same. He's bouncing from node to node over there. Whoops, I was trying to get a good view and jumped off the edge there. And we're all the way back here. No problem, more time to observe the fighting parts of the game in action. So, pardon me just speaking in this odd tone of voice I go to without thinking at night. It is a bit hard on my throat, unfortunately, but I'll live. I'm having so good a time that I don't mind. Again, I think I'll pick this up tomorrow. I'm just in the mood. I'm having a good time. So, what was I saying? Yeah, I was just commenting that it's very much, at different points, like, some games, they're very, like, self-conscious, especially now. I think it started with that silly Mandalore review of Fear, where it makes this thing of how good the AI is because it talks a lot, and, you know, people just try to be flashy with making it obvious that guys are doing things. I would say that in Halo, the Marines are doing so much so often, and so are the aliens, that it feels so natural. People don't even perceive it as good AI. It's just how the Marines act. It's very, like, it took me the longest time to realize that, like, something that greatly disappointed me in video games was that the behavior of entities, like characters in games worlds, never really got more interesting and complex in practice than this game, one of the first I really seriously played. It's very... What was I saying? Yes, Fear, why do I keep wanting to call Fear Thief, is, Fear is a simple game compared to this one. It's only you and rooms of bad guys, and, you know, every room is a pretty tight enclosed space, and it's like the node system, but even simpler in every room. Your enemies, who are all humanoid soldiers, are programmed to do a few very simple things, like take cover behind the following objects. If you lose track of the player, sweep the room. Very simple stuff. And it works decently enough. It does its job all game, but they have these... The Marines in Halo talk, but it's more to give a sense that they're alive, trying to survive, trying to fight, and just, you know, that they're people, they're an animated presence in the world, while the Fear guys, by contrast, constantly say what they're doing, which is just like announcing, like, you know the meme on TV on 4chan of like, I'm directing, I'm cinematographing? The Fear bad guy sounds, the things they say, to me that's just like, I'm artificial intelligencing. Like, look how hard I'm artificial intelligencing. Just, you play Fear and the bad guys you're shooting at, it's constantly, I'm going to take cover and then shoot at the player, and then I'm going to throw a grenade and move to different cover. Look how many actions I'm executing, aren't you impressed? Now, they have, like, cool voice acting, and the designs for the bad guys are cool, so I don't, like, have a miserable time while playing Fear, but it's just, like, it's held up as a really great example, and in my opinion, not really. Now, some idiots, they also get the impression something is wrong, but they say, like, they try to emphasize the point of, like, oh, well, it's very artificial, like, look at how limited their actions are, like, no, I don't really think that's the problem. I think that a lack of ambition is the problem. I don't mind that the Fear guys are, like, basically programmed by hand in each room. Like, I don't say, like, oh, you have to, like, make them actually autonomous and think. That's moronic. What my problem is just that they only are used to realize these very, like, this very narrow field of potential encounters, whereas it just feels like much more interesting things are being done with these guys, even if they're a bit simpler. Like, they run around massive open spaces, they drive things, and they're just fun to be around, they yell and stuff, which makes them feel alive, like you're not alone whenever these guys are around, and the aliens, they talk as well. That's something you unfortunately can't really pick up on because I'm talking over it and I have the volume down low, but these ones in particular, the poor one I'm beating up on now, they speak English and they are talking all game, and since they're here most of the game too, you have a lot of kind of running commentary on each side of the fight, which makes things feel very alive, which is very fun, and yes, that's not something that starts in this game. In Myth, which was an RTS before this, I may have gone into the RTS connection before. It's just something that they took from that, like, you know, typical RTS fashion, they all say like, yes, okay, when you click on them and tell them to do stuff, but, you know, Myth's kind of above and beyond element with that is that they also just like shout and congratulate each other, and, you know, they cheer when they're doing well in a fight, and they like scream in terror and panic when they're doing really badly. It just, they're like the Marines in this game, they just have this really like James Cameron's Aliens kind of personality, like very lively animated people who are having a very exciting time no matter what they're doing is what they're trying to sell you in that game. And of course Halo was going to be the RTS as well. I bring that up because it's relevant to so many different things, including how these guys were designed, not just in the sense that they're meant to be, they were originally like a basic RTS unit, just man with rifle, but also just the way that they talk, the way that they're constantly moving. The idea was we would be looking down on them from a bird's eye view, sort of like we were a moment ago from up there, and they would be just running around and constantly yelling at each other, which would sell the impression that they are alive. And yes, we went from that to, you know, that level of care and attention to detail in the RTS setting translated extremely well into this first-person shooter one, and yeah, that's a thought not many people have given much, if any, thought to, how much, you know, Halo defined years of progress. It's still, frankly, like Call of Duty campaigns are so much Halo campaigns. It was massive in defining what these games are, and so because this game was a kind of spiritual sequel to Myth at one point, basically Myth with science fiction stuff and guns, like, people haven't really commented that a lot of first-person shooter convention actually came from strategy game, a strategy game, consideration of strategy games, what would work in that context, and, you know, on a whim, Bungie kind of flipped it into, you know, RTS conventions and design sensibilities into a first-person shooter, and, you know, that became settled. Much of that became how first-person. And perhaps that could make you think, you know, what if other conventions that were taken as fixed or belonging in one place were moved into others? That could be quite interesting, but I understand I've put that very generally, but I hope you can put together the thought yourself. Is there a kind of game you think, okay, they do this one kind of thing in this one particular type of game, and maybe it could be cool if done in another? That's the kind of thought you're, in my opinion, probably just not meant to allow or allowed to have if you're making a video game today in, like, America. Like, who do you bring such a thought to? You know, if you're Gabe Newell, you can just declare that game will get made, maybe, but Gabe Newell doesn't even want to be Gabe Newell from what I hear. He's just depressed and lives in his little box office. And aside from that, what's going on? You know, who's able to realize a work of that kind of vision? Indies maybe, but they all just want to make games which already exist, and only very superficially back and forth the different elements. What I'm saying, I guess, is just that not a very experimental medium, video games, which is extremely sad considering you can basically do anything within them. And we choose to basically make the same game over and over. Like, even my beloved Halo is basically Quake 2, but way better in every way. The basics are still, we're in 3D space, there is always a gun in front of us, and this gun is how I interact with the world in front of me. Now, this big guy is a hunter, and, oh, I wanted to let him fight the Marines more, but they did him pretty well themselves with help from me. So ammo and stuff here, I think that they may bring me more soldiers, I don't know. If not, we're just going to go in there. Oh yeah, there we go in the subtitles, reinforcements, yes. So anyway, as I was saying, yeah, Halo, and through Halo, massive influence on every other first-person shooter, pretty much defining what they would be from Halo onwards, came from applying real-time strategy conventions in this because, you know, they built half a strategy game and then they realized, wait, all these moving parts we made, the physics, the terrain, the way the guns work, it's just more fun if you're actually on the ground using them, so, you know, yank the camera out of the air and put it in this one soldier's head, and we've just got a much more fun game on our hands. That's, I guess, the thought that I was getting at for the last, like, 5 minutes. I just find that really interesting. And, yeah, when I played Myth for the first time, like, a year ago, I couldn't believe how Halo-like it felt, despite being, you know, superficially so different. That was mind-blowing to me. I love talking about it, and as far as I know, a few other people have taken to the point, but it's not something I've found anybody else independently come across as far as I know. Nobody really talks about it. Interesting to me, anyway, and yeah, I guess that gives a bit of value to this particular playthrough of Halo that I'm making. I have thoughts on this game that other people don't have, and they're mine, so I'm going to indulge them and take my time with them. We'll get onto that in a moment and start part 2 of the level, but first, let's just appreciate this scene for a few different reasons. We have 8 Marines out at once, which is loads of fun. We've left behind all of this chaos. And we can compare again. Massive, beautiful cliff drop-off. It looks very lonely and dangerous. And this, again, kind of room, which is nature, but disguises its room like nature by having a giant cutaway. They use that trick a lot, again, and I love it every time. And the effect is ruined by how cluttered this is, and even where it is the cutaway, they still want to box us in. They cover the horizon in mountains, even though they have this perfectly usable, you know, fade into nothing effect where we're just, it's space beyond here, but, you know, the people who were contracted to make this, again, I suspect that they're just third worlders who feel horror vacui in the face of an open space, and they, you know, they just, no. You have to be able to see something boxing you in at any given time. It feels like the world ends very close around you. Comforting if you're a certain kind of person, maybe. And again, foliage just out of control. Color balance all wrong. The big part of the chaotic scene around here is that the blood glows in this game. It went away because I was flipping back and forth, but I can just show you again. The blood of the little English-speaking guys is a bioluminescent blue. Some scenes it shows up better than others, but there it is. And you just... I can't even get any out of them right now, but you just can barely see it even when it's there with the new graphics, and it just... It's just a great thing that they did with color, the original game, that a scene would be dark, and then you would leave, like, giant, basically piles of bodies and strange blood, which is like blue and purple and glows around this, you know, dark area, dark terrain, this natural color, light beams shining. It's a very dynamic scene with a lot of simple parts having very clear and striking interactions with each other. Simple brown, plain ground, dark light, bioluminescent blood. Compared to this, what strikes you as, like, you know, remotely notable about this? It's just this disgusting, like, post-2008 blur of visual noise. It's... Again, our friend Adolf Loos put it better than I've ever seen put anywhere else. This is visual babble. It's just offensive in the same sense that, like, bad children's TV or YouTube is offensive. It's just gibberish. It doesn't mean anything. It's not satisfying to be around. It's hideous. There is nothing distinct that I can appreciate here. It's ornamentation, among other things. Oh god, I just looked up. I didn't realize it's even worse when you're right underneath it. I'm sorry. Look at that. It's like stars. It's a very nice effect. It looks ominous, distant, inscrutable. There's light on, which just suggests, like, enough to suggest activity, but not to suggest any kind of coherence or familiarity, and then oh, look, it's just a giant gaming PC. It's got, like, giant plug things on it. It's all very shiny and glowy, made of distinct parts, whereas this is like... The ships, they look like weird metallic teardrops with like city skylight effects on their undersides by comparison in the original incarnation. Just, again, the design sensibilities. It's also very sparse, masculine, and just, again, as Lou said, it just suggests the instincts of a higher civilization, and as I've gone into before and will again at length at some point later, it's something Bungie were extremely conscious of while making this. The kind of visual, how instincts correlate to sensibilities and how that plays out in how people behave and what they create and what they like. And I may have gone into it briefly in the first videos with the bad audio, but not just how it looks, but also very clearly in the lore. I dislike the word, but it is actually relevant here. Basically the wider multimedia work which Halo is. They commissioned a novel to be written alongside and released alongside this first game. They were serious about that from the start. It's very much this idea of like clean, serious, sparse, very unsentimental, not ornamental sensibilities. This carries over not just from visual sense, like I'm not just saying, oh, Bungie are cool guys who don't like superfluous crap. I mean, they very much understand that it's a holistic thing. It comes from a certain mindset from its creators and reflects a certain mindset in their creations. It's a very extraordinarily well-realized and elaborate civilizational conflict they have created. That's what Halo is to me, as I may have said. I've said it before and I'll say it again. Halo is a very civilization-conscious work, to a level which so few people give credit to that I am actually inclined to think that on some level Bungie may not have even known themselves entirely what they were creating. But I think I'll just power through the rest of this level tomorrow, and then in the next level and the one after, they'll also record the first one, I will elaborate more on what I mean by that. And I'll just go into this and then cut the video. Pardon me about the throat, by the way, I'm just hurting myself here a little bit. Very fun scene here where they go up. Okay, we get a very cool scene to open the next video, and I look forward to sharing that. And I think we get a save right here. We can just... yeah, I'm sure we did. Doesn't matter if we didn't anyway. Save and quit here. Thank you again.